It's funny, for something that's so widely used, Facebook has to be the most unintuitive piece of software in history. Anyway, good morning. We're live. Happy Friday. It is March 22nd, 2019.
Happy Friday.
And the world is coming to an end. Kidding. Good morning. So we're gonna deep dive into Clickup today. Let me go over into the Facebook group. Check on the.
We have shimmering.
Yeah, that's Laura.
Laura, your background shimmers around your hair.
Yes, it does. She's magical.
You're muted. You're muted.
That's why my name is Shimmer.
Got it.
Hartley. Hey. What are you doing? No.
Okay.
No.
Somebody else to let in. Where's Matthew Fulton this morning?
No.
Thought for sure he would be here with us.
Might be still sleeping.
Wake him up. I'm going to drive up to Ventura and wake his ass up. All right, let's get this party started. So, one more second, because I had something ready here. Kind of start with.
Can I squirrel you for a second while you're doing whatever you're doing?
Make it a quick one.
Zoom. So can you call people right from your Zoom and have them join? Or when you hit that call button?
Yeah, you guys did that to me on my birthday.
That's right. But I want to know, if you're in a Zoom, is there a way to call someone that's on your chat without creating a new Zoom?
I don't know. I haven't played with that.
So. Wait, maybe.
Okay.
So is Linda on our chat right now?
She's not, but if I go into my contacts...
I'm inviting her. I just invited her.
If I go into my contacts, I have an option to invite people.
Yeah.
Who I'm connected to.
But I think if you do that now while you have this up, it takes you out of this and into a new one.
So
what happened on your birthday, Seth?
No, I got invited right in, and all of you were there.
Yeah, I just clicked invite to Linda. She declined it. She's probably busy, but.
See, Matthews says he's in a meeting. That's why he's not with us, because that's just his status that he set.
That's what he uses.
Craig says in a Zoom meeting, because you're in this one. So, all right. Anyway, let's get down to business here. Down to business. So, as I was beginning to say, I don't easily make a switch, from one app to another. I like to play with a lot of apps, but that doesn't mean I switch to them necessarily. I'll play with it. It'll be a fun little toy for a while. And then usually I'll move on. And the golden rule, as far as whether or not I'll kind of make the switch to a new app, is that it either has to solve a problem I haven't already got solved, or it has to solve one better, right? So in this case, I believe this falls in the second category, that it solves one better. That, and I still love Active Collab, but this just does things. It's like the way I've been, hearing it from others and saying it myself. It's like they looked at all the apps like Asana and Trello and everything else, that people use for these kinds of productivity applications. It's like they looked at all of them and fixed all the things that were sort of wrong or missing from all of them and made this kind of perfect creation, it seems. It's not without
perfect.
All of your videos and put all of that together when
what?
All of the other apps.
I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
Maybe they got the information from you by watching your videos.
No, I doubt it. But no, they really
don't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, it's like they've thought of everything. Now, it's not perfect. We've run into a few things. Laura found some articles that suggest that there are problems with recurrences, although nobody that I've talked to who's been using it has run into that, where like it doesn't do the right date or the next recurrence date or something, or it skips one. And they're constantly working on improving it. That's the other thing I look for when I'm looking at an app is, like, is anybody home behind the scenes? Are people working on this? Are they making updates? Are they listening to feedback from customers so they can improve the product? And, this company seems to meet all those criteria. They are very much developing this product, very much responding to feedback. I've just from everything I've read so far, there's talk about what they're working on for the next sort of iteration from their development perspective, which means they're working on it. I've looked at other apps that I've loved. One example is what do you call it? One example is the notebook app. It's a journal app called Penzu. And I love the app. A long time ago, I wanted it to replace Evernote for me. But when I went onto the company's Facebook page, like nothing was happening. It was like nobody was home. Although recently I did test their support, and their support proved to be good. They got back to me. I had a problem. One of the reasons I ultimately abandoned it completely, like I wasn't even using it for my own light use, was it started running really slow. I never bothered to reach out to their support. Recently I did, because one thing they do that's very clever is they send you these emails trying to hook you back in. They'll say, here's what you wrote 2 years ago in your journal, right? And so I was curious. I wanted to get in, but it was very slow to load. So finally I was like, screw it, let me test their support out. Reached out to their support. Within a day, they had my problem fixed. The problem was I had one of my journals for some reason spat out like 1,000 copies of this one page I'd written. So in that, I imagine it's something to do with the sync from the mobile to the, to the server. But anyway, so I don't take it lightly in terms of, going into a new app like this, and especially for me to reach out to Erica. Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Say, Erica, I think we need to switch to a new app. It's got to be something pretty compelling, right?
I mean, it's pretty compelling that I'm here at 8 o'clock in the morning, so.
That's true. There's that too.
Straight from my workout, I came right here.
Wow.
That's impressive.
How was the workout?
Luckily, we're not all in the same room.
My employees are like, are you sure? And I'm
Wow.
like,
Well,
Nice. So, it's not easy. Like I said, I'll play with a lot of apps, but to actually adopt using it within our firm, not a light decision by any stretch, right? So let me share my screen, and I'll hopefully share the right one this time. That's been my new thing lately. I'll remember to share my screen, but then I share the wrong one. So are you guys looking at the ultimate accounting project on my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Now we're switching over to something else for a second. So here's Dynalist, totally different app, but I wanted to sketch out the hierarchy of how stuff is organized on Clickup. And this I think is important to get to understand at the beginning, right? So we when we unboxed it last week, we, started discovering this. And like I mentioned, in 97 and up, we've had a lot of continued discussion. We always create a channel for a particular app and lots of discussion about what we've each been running into and what we've figured out about how to do some really cool stuff with it. And so I'm going to show you some really cool stuff that you can do with it today. But this is the first step, is understanding the structure. So at the top level, we have teams. Each team is in its own little sphere, right? So the teams aren't connected to one another. Okay, so that's important to remember right off the top. So for me, my teams that I set up I have one team for Nerd Enterprises, right? That's everything Nerd Enterprises. That will be any project, any client, anything having to do with Nerd Enterprises. The whole team that works at Nerd Enterprises will be in this team. Then I created one for my personal, right? So I can just keep track of personal stuff I need to do. And mind you, if you want to be able to look at all of it across the board, then just put everything in a single team. Don't separate it like this, right? So if you're somebody who wants to be able to see, here's everything I got to do, whether it's personal or otherwise, then don't split it out into a different team. And then I've got this Nerds Unite team, which is kind of our little 97 and up playground, right? So, and that's actually where we are here, where I set up this ultimate accounting project. So that's the team level. That's the top level of where stuff can be put within ClickUp, okay? Within each team, you have spaces, Within each space, you have projects. So in a space, you can create multiple projects. Within each project, you can create lists. And then, of course, within each list, you have your tasks, right? Now,
In your task, you have subtasks.
and within, that's true. Thank you for pointing that out. So then you have subtasks.
And checklists, and I haven't quite figured out the.
So yeah, a checklist is just something you can add into a task so that if it's almost like subtasks that you want to be able to, it's like a checklist within the checklist, so to speak. And we can take a look at that. But this is the structure. And so you want to think about this before you lay it out for your accounting firm. Now, Clickup themselves, sorry, somebody's giving some background noise. So if everybody wouldn't mind just muting until you have a question or something, and then feel free to unmute, just so it's not distracting. Okay, perfect. So keep this in mind. Now, ClickUp suggests that you create one space for your company, right? And call it like main accounting or whatever, right? And then within that one space, you'll have a project for each client, right? And then you'll create your lists and tasks and subtasks that way. I've taken a different approach. I like things spread out. I like having a lot of room and space. So the way I'm setting mine up, we have a space for each client. That way I can have multiple projects for each client, right? Rather than being limited to just creating one. I mean, I suppose doing it their way, I could do accounting project client X, and then I could do financial modeling project client X, right? But so that now I have to start appending project names to distinguish that it's the same client but different projects, right? Now, some would say we'll just create different lists for the different things that you're doing for that client. But again, that doesn't work as well for me, right? And as we discussed in detail yesterday in our 97 and up group call, there's no right or wrong answer. Just because I'm choosing to do it this way doesn't mean that's right, doesn't mean you're stupid because you're not doing it my way. It's really about what works for you. That's what this comes down to. So, that's what you want to think about, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that even if you have it spread across lots of spaces, what I got used to doing in Active Collab a lot, which works very nicely here, is the jump command. So if I know I want to jump into a certain project, I can hit the letter K, and I can jump to a location. So if I want to go to, like I have this is my Nerds Unite spaced. I'm thinking the jump may only work within that team though. So
I was just going to ask you if it only works within the team.
Yeah, so again, teams are completely separate. So I have to jump over to this team, then I can jump to a particular. So you see, notice it tells me these are spaces. So I have spaces for different clients here, and then I have my kind of nerd headquarters project that I create.
So can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Back to teams and spaces.
Yep.
Can you have separate teams that can go across spaces?
No, it's the other way around. Spaces are within teams.
No, I understand spaces are within teams. I'm thinking of teams as like, I'm going to say partners.
No, like I said, teams are completely separate spheres, right? So they're completely separate from one another. As you just watched, right? I can't jump to a place within that's in a different team than the one I'm in.
And
So
don't they charge by team? Like
I have a feeling they probably do. I haven't gotten that deep with it yet, but the fact of the matter is I don't plan on paying for the shared 97 and up team, nor do I plan on paying for my personal one, right?
Okay.
I'm not going to get that deep with it. I don't need to have collaborators in my personal team. For that, I just need to track when I need to call the city of Burbank for a large item pickup, right?
So team would be your account with ClickUp.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would limit it to just that, because a team would be, as the term suggests, different teams that you have that you work with. So let's say in addition to having Nerd Enterprises, Inc., I worked with a CPA firm, right? Let's say I collaborated with a CPA firm on projects. I might very well create a different team for that. right? Because it's a completely different group of people and a different set of clients and projects and things. So again, that's why I was careful to lay this out the way I did. That and if you watch the ClickUp videos, they're kind of careful to explain this too. That forget about the actual terms they use. Just think in terms of these are the levels, right? So these are the levels that you have to work with. At the topmost level, everything is completely separate from one another. Thereafter, everything is connected within that team.
I've used the teams one, I'm just starting with it, but one for sort of client-facing ecosystem that has to do with client work and client projects, and then another team for internal company stuff.
Right. And that's a smart way to do it, because that way you can keep your internal stuff completely separate and you
right. I won't
less
accidentally share something.
Yeah.
And that actually was what I was thinking of. So
Yeah.
that
So
is,
yeah, you could do one team for internal stuff and one team for the client-facing stuff. But again, you might run into the snag of having to pay, twice for the same people, so to speak. Then again, internally, you may not need that many. It just depends on how many collaborators you need, right?
And in my mind, a client, you would end up having two groups of to-dos if we had client-facing and internal, right?
Well, the internal one would be the to-dos that you don't really need the client involved with, right?
No, plus you assign things to particular people, so you have a view of all your to-dos across, I think.
You won't have them across teams.
Yeah.
It will be totally separate for between.
Yeah, that's why I was worried about setting up.
One thing that was,
I don't know.
One thing that caused me some hesitation about putting my clients into spaces originally was I didn't think that I could copy templates and just make copies of things from one space into another. But we found out yesterday that you can absolutely do that. But I believe that that's where it ends. I don't believe that we can put it into another team.
No, you definitely can't put it into another team. We tested all that yesterday.
Right.
So let's get into this, though. Let's talk about how to kind of structure this, because that's what today is supposed to be all about. So again, I have, in my case, I create a space for each client. And I was saying this in our 97 Up group yesterday. One of the main reasons I prefer to do it that way is that I might have some very different projects to do from one client to the next, right? Most of our clients, we have for bookkeeping, have either come in because they started with us on a training project. So that's a totally different kind of project. And one of the things to cue in on is that when you set up these projects, there's a number of things to set up to be aware of, right? So, for example, now we're in the Nerds Unite space, right? And if you are going to do different teams and things, make sure you take the time to put the icons in there so it's very clear, like what planet you're on. These things are important. So then now within this space, we have projects up here, right? And so this was the generic Get to Know ClickUp project that they kind of start you off with. And last week, a bunch of us were playing in here, right? So you'll see there's some stuff in here that's assigned to Matthew and to Greg and myself. And then last night, just quickly, I sketched out just this beginning of the Ultimate Accounting Project. So if you're going to set this up the way ClickUp suggests, and that's what I'm going to go with because that's what most people seem to want to do, so you have all your clients in a single space, then the Ultimate Accounting Project would be your client, right? And what I'm doing here actually is building a generic structure, which, thank you, Greg, for bringing this up, I'm going to then save as a template. That's what I want to do here. Kind of first thing is build out the basic generic layout of a typical, let's call it monthly bookkeeping client, right? Where maybe we do it weekly. I always do stuff weekly. I don't like to wait a month, even if I call it monthly. So we have the project. It's called the Ultimate Accounting Project. Now over here, we've got some settings. So you click this little, we call this a More menu. When you see the little 3 dots.
They often refer to it in their videos as an ellipses because that's what it is. But
except when you turn it the other way, then it's not an ellipses anymore.
It's a hamburger.
Yeah. Well, the hamburger, though, is usually the lines, that they're longer than the little dots, if we're
All right.
being technical. So,
It would be so nice if we could get like on the same page and use the same
well,
words.
no, but we're talking about specific, this is coder terminology. That the
I know. That's why I'm
Yeah.
laughing and saying that.
Yep. So if I want to change the, I'm at the project level, right? And you can change the project statuses. Now, this is important. This is something you want to take the time and build out. You can you can adopt the space statuses. So at the space level, I didn't define much. I just used your pretty, like either the task is open, in progress, or it's closed, right? Then they have a simple version, which excludes in progress. And then there's custom. So custom is where you can create your own, right? And one of the things I was suggesting that we've immediately begun to set up for our own clients is definitely something like waiting on client, right?
You know what? This is the one reason I think I can migrate from Smart Sheets, because in Smart Sheets, I've got waiting on Sarah, waiting on Karen, waiting on client, you know, and it's all customized, and to have this much flexibility is amazing.
Yeah. Yep. And then so open, in progress, I like to have a status called pending, meaning kind of it's on hold, right? Waiting for something else, maybe other than the client, right? And then in progress, it's probably the accountant in me. I prefer to have it called work in progress, right? Whip. I have iWhip. Okay, and you can change the color, which again might sound silly, but maybe not, right? Like I like making whip green because it's green as go, right? So work in progress, green, waiting on client, red flag, right? This is something I want to make sure I get all over the client about like every day until they get me whatever I need. You know, and then pending, that color is a little subtle, kind of hard to see. You know, so take the time to think about this stuff. They also have some other standards based on different kinds of projects. Scrum is, you can Google the word Scrum, you'll see it's this whole process. It's actually for developers, for how they organize and outline, you know, their projects. You know, marketing, so you can pick from among these. I'm going to click done. So that's your statuses. Now, one of the things that your status play a very important role in is on the board view up here. So right now we're in the list view, okay? And here's the banking list under the Ultimate Accounting Project. And by the way, we can color code these lists. So let's do green for banking since it's money. Okay, but now if I go to the board view, the board view will show me in a very Trello-like Kanban layout each of the statuses that I've created. So I can take a task here and say reconcile or get statements. Okay, and then I can just drag it over and say, all right, work in process. Maybe I've asked the client for them, right? Then I've asked the client for them. Now it's waiting on client. Okay, hold on. It looks like we've got something in the chat. I'll come back to the chat in a minute. What else we got? We got, I was through to saying the challenge that I'm having is making notes regarding clients. Okay, so hold that thought. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Notepad feature of this because we discussed that at length yesterday and why to use it, whether or not to use it, and how to use it if you are going to use it. But continuing along here, this is where you can actually move something through its stages. If it's pending, maybe we're having trouble, we're doing a cleanup job and we can't get the statements, whatever it is. Clicking into the task, you have a lot of robust features. You click right in here. It's got a nice, pretty robust WYSIWYG editor. You can even embed images. I saw an example in their sample project where they had a GIF image, you know, a little animation. So you can put tasks in here that serve as instructions for your team with a little short GIF clip that shows them like where to go, what to click on, that kind of stuff. You know, like I said, they've really seemed to have thought of everything. I can put a code block in here. So if I want to put HTML in here, I want to embed, let's say, something from Airtable, right? I can actually do that here. So again, lots and lots of power and flexibility.
I also saw somewhere that you can add emojis into the list names. So like where it says get statement.
Oh, to identify them better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, since you brought that up, you can copy emojis. You can just, if you Google emoji, there's a site called Emojipedia.
Well, yeah.
So if you just want to get emojis, right, your own, and not rely on whatever they sort of provide, let's just go with animals and nature here for a second. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to show you real quick. So the see no evil monkey.
They need a squirrel is what they need, because that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I know. I can copy this just to demonstrate what you brought up. If I go into the list name, this is to rename it, the little pencil icon.
That takes a little getting used to.
Yes, it does. So I'll put see how I could paste the emoji right in there? But that's interesting, it didn't stay.
So try it this way.
Maybe if I put it on the end. There it is. It does show up in there now at the end. Maybe I didn't save it properly before. Let me try and stick it at the beginning now. Okay, yeah, I didn't save it properly before. So
now,
there it is.
Try one more thing just as a...
By the way, you can also resize this margin a little bit.
Oh. Edit the name again, if you would. And now just pick a random spot in the middle of the words. And hit the Windows button and then a period.
Okay, Windows period. Okay, so that's how it brings up their kind of standard emojis.
This is not, this is apparently a Windows function that I didn't know anything about until yesterday.
Got it. Yeah, I've gotten in the habit of going to Emojipedia because there you can find anything and everything. And you can pretty much take these and copy and paste them anywhere. So it's cool. Right. I do it a lot in email subjects now when I send them out. All right, so but back to actually building an accounting project. So when you set up your statuses, that's going to very much drive what the board view looks like. Let's go back to the list view now. And in our banking list, so we have get statements. Notice it's got the status of pending because in the board view, I had moved it around accordingly, right? And let's focus on this for a second because I want you to see kind of everything there is to do here. So get statements. Now, just backing up for a second, and for the record, I never do this with clients. I always make sure they empower me to get the statements myself because the client's going to slow me down. I'm going to end up with everything in the status of waiting on client because the clients suck about getting stuff to us, don't they? So some are good. I have a few clients that will jump on something right away when I ask them for it because, and I think this has a lot to do with it because they're paying me a lot of money. So they want to make sure I have what I need to do what they're paying me a lot of money to do. But especially if you're serving a client in those lower tiers of like, you know, $150, $200 a month for bookkeeping, you're generally not going to get the sort of clients that are highly motivated to get you what you need. Anyway, so this would never exist in my world, but I know for a lot of you it does. So you can change the status right from here. If you click on the actual status, it will give you the drop down so you can just choose. If you click the arrow next to it, it'll just cycle through them. But notice it also resizes with the length of the name of the status. So that's something to keep in mind too. For me, I prefer to just be intentional and click here so I can be specific about what I get to. Okay, so then the description, we can have at it all day long. You can put lots of detailed descriptive information. Over here on the right, you can have a comment thread going on about this, right? This is a comment, and it also shows you the activity feed around this particular task, okay? Now, they also have this within a task to do, and this is where you can add a subtask or a checklist. You can also add a subtask right here, like maybe it's call the bank. But what's really cool about this, and I think Asana did this too, if I click on the subtask, I get a full task type dialog around that subtask. So I can be very detailed about the subtask itself. Of course, you can assign the task to multiple people, which is cool.
What do you find better, tasks or checklists or tasks? I'm not sure how they work.
Different things.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're working differently yet, because if you have a checklist, it's almost like tasks. Right?
Yeah, I think a checklist is really, it's like a checklist within a task or within a subtask, right? So it's, I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I haven't played with this enough yet
Okay.
to feel like I understand the different use case. But I suppose if one use case that comes to mind right away is when I create videos, and there's a series of steps I want to make sure I address. Because if the task is the lesson that I'm developing, then the steps are going to be write the content, record the video, edit the video, upload the video, update the settings for the video. So that's certainly where I would use a checklist here, right?
So Seth, I want to say that using a checklist for me is when you have reoccurring things like that all the time. It's always the same. Like Seth is using with your videos, you need to do the same things all the time, every time, and you could create a template from it.
Right, but you could do the same exact thing with subtasks. So
Subtasks seems to be more customizable, like specific to the client to me, not necessarily reoccurring.
I think too, I don't think you can assign checklists to other people. And so maybe having...
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I can't assign a checklist. There's no way to assign this to somebody. But Gina, going back to your comment, I'm not sure I see it that way, honestly, because I can create a list of subtasks and save that as a template for the task, right? And if I make this whole task recurring, it's going to take those subtasks with it. Right?
Got it.
Another cool thing, look next to my picture there on Call the Bank, and there's a green, now it's red. So I'm live updating that.
Right.
On my side, and it's showing up over on Seth's side.
Greg changed the status to waiting on client now.
But if you have get the statements is the task, and then you have a checklist to say, oh, these are the steps to get the statements.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that then flow through with the task if it's a recurring task? I would think it would.
As would the subtask. So you can do it in either place. I can have a list of subtasks with the steps, or I can do it as a checklist.
And the recurring...
I don't know who that was speaking. Maybe it was Kristen who pointed it out, is I can assign subtasks to a person. I can't assign items on a checklist to a person. Oh, no, you can. It's right here. Assign.
Okay. Sarah had a question in the chat.
Sorry, too many people talking at once. So, Erica, you first.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you can only assign the entire checklist to a person, whereas subtasks you could assign to individually to different people based on the subtask. But to me, it seems like a subtask is some task that needs to be completed as part of this larger task, whereas a checklist would maybe be things that I just need to make sure are included with this task, or
So here's a checklist. And it does appear you can assign each item on the checklist separately to a different person. So that's the thing. It's not really clear then why you would do one versus the other. And
I wonder if one might be a blocker.
What?
If with tasks, you might be, with the subtasks, you might be able to do dependencies and blockers sort of thing, where we can't do step 3 until step 2 is fully complete.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. This is, at the end of the day, I'm going to chalk this up because I don't want to spend too much time in this rabbit hole. At the end of the day, as you play with something like this, you're going to figure out what works for you. And you're going to have your reasons why one works better than the other at the end of the day. The bottom line is just know that you have both options here and play with them and see what works and why, right? That's really how I would sum this up at the end of the day so we don't get kind of too hung up on this. Of course, you can add attachments, and I love that it has a Google Drive integration. Another example of why I'm a huge fan of Google Drive, because everywhere you go, there's a Google Drive integration. Notice there's not a OneBox or OneDrive integration here, Office 365 or anything.
It also has Zapier, I think, integrations.
It has Zapier in any major cloud app. Yep, when you set up your projects, you can have it, and and Zapier is going to be there with just about anything.
I will say that the options are very limited when using the Zap on posting something into. I mean, and maybe that's just by design, I guess. But the only outbound, going into ClickUp, the only thing that you can do is create a task. You can't create a project or a
But have you played with using ClickUp as the trigger, like to do something when a new task is created in ClickUp as the
No.
trigger to do something else? That's
No.
where I'm more inclined to
Yeah.
want to play. Now, let's go back to Sarah's question. So she says, how do I know what month this is for? So that's probably a good spot to stop on and talk about the recurrences, okay? Because in theory, I would have this one task for the current month, and then when it's completed, I would want it to recur for next month. So next month at a certain point, I would start the process again of gathering the statements for that month, right? And whether you do one task like this to remind yourself to get all the statements for all the accounts or a different one for every bank account and credit card account is up to you. Again, that's up to you and how you want to set up your workflow. I keep things pretty broad because I know, and this is what we were discussing yesterday in 97 and up, that I use the balance sheet as my checklist. I don't need a reminder necessarily for every single account because I know all I really need is a reminder to go through the balance sheet. And when I do that, I'm going to hit every bank account and every credit card account. And along the way, when I do that, I'm going to check, okay, so I'm at this credit card account on the balance sheet. Is there a statement for it yet? Or should there be? And if yes, then go get it. If not, then move on, right? So I try not to get too bogged down in too much detail on these things because then you're going to spend all your time organizing this stuff and none of your time actually getting work done, right? That's the balance that you have to kind of achieve with this. But the recurring features in this product are amazing. So when I click on this up here, first let's set a due date for this one. So let's say this would have been for March. Let's say this was due March 1st, right? So we've got the due date established. You can also do an estimate on the task, and you can log time on the task. Those are all things I turned on when I created the project. So now let's go back to the recurrence. I want to repeat it. Now, I know most of us are used to just saying, all right, do it on a schedule, do it on the first day of every month. I'm a much bigger fan of using the trigger rather than the schedule. Because on a schedule, I can, I'm going to end up with 6 versions of a task because I never bothered to check off that it was complete. Right? On a trigger, the task is going to sit there until it's marked closed, and you have other choices. You can establish the trigger being based on any status that you've created for the project, right? But the typical use case is when it's closed, when I mark this complete, right? What's the action? Now notice the default is just change the due date. Keep the same task, change it to next month's due date. In a lot of cases, that's going to be good enough, right? But some of you are going to want to keep the record because you'll accumulate comments that transpired around getting the statements. And keep in mind, we're just using get statements as an example. This could be any task, right? So maybe you don't want to change the due date. Maybe you want to create a whole new task. But check this out. It's a little subtle. It's in kind of a light font. When you create the new task, you can choose to copy everything from this task, or you can choose specific things. So you can take information from that task and carry it forward to the next recurrence, right? So I'm a much bigger fan of using the trigger as opposed to doing the repeat on a schedule. Because the repeat on a schedule, I feel like is going to tend to make me lazy, and I'm going to forget to click things to mark them complete. Here, this way, I have to mark one complete for the next one to happen.
I have a question, Seth.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to say if the status is marked waiting or waiting on client, that there's the daily reminder sent, like a daily reminder sent to me to remind me to contact the client? Is that something
you can do all that in your notification settings. So I've been getting emails every day about anything that's still past due, which I love, right? Yeah. Because Erica, in our case specifically, we have all of our client communications in Slack. Clients almost never email us, and when they do, we shoot them. Right? So the point is, because I've gotten out of the email jungle so much by using Slack, I love getting these kind of reminders in my email inbox because they're what I call throwaway emails. They're just that. They're the reminder, oh, you have some things you didn't finish yet. And I can keep those emails open, or I can star them knowing this is stuff I have to get done today before I walk away from my desk for the night. Right? I kind of use it that way. So yes, in your notification settings, you can establish exactly what reminders you get. You can establish whether it's an email or a text message or otherwise, right? Or just inside the app. By the way, the mobile app on this thing is really slick. So go ahead and play around with the mobile app. And Greg, don't let me forget before the hour is up to show everybody what you showed me yesterday with the Chrome extension, because now I've been using that a lot and it's really freaking cool. Anyway, so when you're setting the recurrence on a trigger, You can carry forward whatever information you choose to carry forward, such as subtasks and assignees or checklists, right? So still not seeing a whole lot of difference between these two, to be honest with you. But like I said, that's going to amount to whatever works for you. Watchers just means like I can have, anybody who's a watcher is going to get notified about activity on this task, right? So it may be assigned to me, but I can have Erica set up as a watcher so that she knows what's going on with respect to this particular task.
But I think the power, Seth, if you go back into the recurrence, repeat on trigger, a real powerful tool to me, and it's really kind of nuanced in there, is if you change the action to change
Create a new task.
That second thing that says from this task,
yes, you can make it relative.
I always change it when it's appropriate to the newest task, because that's going to maintain any.
It'll make it cumulative. Yep. And there's going to be use cases where you definitely want one or the other. You might want the original task because that's the pure task without any noise, right? Or you may, the second choice here, newest task, is I want it cumulative. I want it to keep bringing forward all the stuff from the last iteration, right?
I mean, a potential use case, I'm not saying that we should do this, but a potential use case would be if you were to log the client credentials into this task, and then they updated the credentials. If you're creating it from the first task, then it's going to have the stale credentials. And then if you use the newest task, it'll have the...
Right. No, I think everybody gets that the newest task is cumulative, so it'll have the most recent changes you've made. But what I'm saying is there's definitely use cases where I wouldn't want all that noise that carries forward. I would just want to make a copy of the original task in its original form, because I don't, again, there's going to be use cases for both, which of course is why they give you the choice, right? So let's also address Adam's question, because he was asking, and this is specifically schedule based. He wants to know if you can account for weekends. So when you do repeat on a schedule, you can repeat based on days, weeks, months, or years. So a lot of project management apps don't give you a quarterly option. Here you can do that by setting it for every 3 months, right?
Yeah, I think his question is, let's say we do it every month, and the 10th.
Well, and then on all days, so that's where you choose, you can exclude the weekends, right? You can uncheck Sunday and Saturday if what you're trying to do is not have anything go off on a weekend.
No, change it to month, though. That's his question.
Yeah, I think he's asking, like, if something needs to be done by the 15th of every month, does it account for if the 15th falls on a Sunday, is it going to bump it up to, say, the 13th or whatever?
Oh, probably not. It's probably more specific than that. So this is on a date every month. Well, let's say we did it every week then. So I think this would account for it that way because, again, you're excluding Saturday or Sunday. So I believe this would force it to get created on a weekday.
No, what you're doing there is you're creating 5 tasks a week.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's the schedule for the task.
But I don't think that we're going to be able to.
Well, let's say we did it.
Go to the month. Go to the month category, like every 1 month.
You could do it by week, but then you're not always going to hit it on the 15th. But you could.
Yeah, you could say the second week of every month or something like that.
Right. But again, that's going to create 5 tasks in that week.
Yeah, if you do it like this, So otherwise, if you're doing it this way by week, you would have to pick which day. So I suppose you could do it that way and just say, always do it on a Friday or always do it on a Monday. I believe unchecking everything but the day you would want it, and probably Monday is the safe way to go. So that's sort of the earliest in the week.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is all stuff you have to play with and see how it behaves, just to see how it works. So that's, kind of the deep dive on the tasks, right? Everything that you can do with the task. You can also flag and set a high priority on something.
It also looks like you don't have tags enabled in this?
Yeah, tags are right here.
Oh, okay.
I haven't played with them. And I haven't played with tags yet because there seems like so many other ways to categorize things. And one of the things I don't like, and Asana was, I faulted Asana for this too, is I can create tags within the context of a task, but I have nowhere to go anywhere around here to say, all right, show me my tags.
Well, probably in the filter, right?
Yeah, you can filter the.
Tag.
Yeah, you can filter by tag, but I would want to be able to see a list of.
What I would think would be a really great use for the tags is, so like Seth and I, we meet every Friday, and I have things, issues that have come up throughout the week with clients that I want to discuss with you. So I would say, like, any particular task that I've had an issue with a client, I would flag that as, like, maybe say tag agenda. So that then when we get together, I could filter out agenda items, and it would make us a nice little list of all the things that I want to discuss with you when we meet on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Nice thumbs up there.
Right. No, that is a good idea. I'm going to move my sharing to the other screen. I just checked our Facebook feed, and people are commenting that, Adam, it's very small.
Yes, it was small. I had a Zoom.
Yeah, because I have it on my, I've been sharing it on my 4K monitor. So I'm going to move to my other screen with a lower resolution, so it should be a lot better this way.
Much.
Okay, but I want to get back to the structure because our hour is actually almost up, right? But I also wanted to make sure you got the deep dive on the tasks and the subtasks and all of that. And so just real quick on what you said, Erica, that is a great use case for the tags. So it's just, there's a lot to this product, so you just have to kind of play with it, right? And see what's going to work, how it's going to work. Heaven forbid you should use this option, but evidently you can print a task. There's the history, and it will just take your task full screen. It looks like into the description, and here's where you can get out of full screen mode. The other thing I love about this that I've never seen in another project management app is this choice right here where it says minimize task. It just minimizes the task to the bottom of your screen. So that if I want to kind of put it to the side for a minute, but I don't want to forget about it, I want to make sure I come back to it before I'm done for the day, this is a great way to manage that kind of stuff, right? And if you move your mouse over these, you'll see there's an X to the right of any of them, so you can kind of permanently pull them out of that sort of queue. Right, so I love that because it helps. It's for me, it's a way of making sure, it's one more way to make sure I don't forget to do something that I want to make sure I do today. Okay, so Alexa's asking, can you email tasks into ClickUp? Not only can you email you can email into a task. Each task will get its own unique email address. So if I go here into the task, actually I think I have to do it from outside.
It's the list.
Where's the share option? There's a share option that lets you.
It's at the list level.
Oh, it's not. I thought you could do it to a task as well. I thought you could email straight to a task.
Well, hit the ellipses there.
Maybe not. So yeah, if you go here and you go to share. No, sorry, it's not share.
No, that's
email
that's
instructions. It's the email.
Yeah.
Why isn't it here?
Go.
Oh, it's here. Sorry, I was on the project. It's at the list level, and this email icon is email instructions, and that gets you an email address you can use. So you can forward an email to a list. I thought there was something where you could also do it right into a task. But what you
can from email when you use the Chrome extension. When you
I'm going to show that next, but that's something different. That's but that's not using an email address. That's using the extension to add it directly, and I do want to show that. But so if you want to forward an email, this is how you do it. You forward it to the list, and it will become its own task within that list. Right?
What if you were to click on the get statements task?
Click on which?
The get statements task itself.
Right.
And then drill into.
Wait, no, I think I see where it's going to be. Never mind.
The
If
three
you
dots
got it here on this guy, Now you have email instructions for the task itself. I knew it was there. So that way you can forward an email directly into a task, because that email just may have some dialogue that you want to be able to follow up on while you're working on that task. I knew it was there at the task level.
And it's also important to note that you can uniquely share that task, with just one person, let's say. That you could have them
So if you're exactly, if you want to have somebody invited as a guest just to collaborate on this one task, you don't have to invite them into the whole space or the whole project. You can share just this one task with them. You put their email to invite them, and they're going to get invited in. They're only going to have access to this task. So where you invite them from has a lot of context in terms of what they have access to. If you want them invited at the space level, then you click this invite more people option down here. Okay, now going back to, again, the bigger picture structure, how to do this for accounting firm. Again, I've got the main accounting project, the ultimate accounting project. I have a list for banking, and this kind of starts us off with how I always suggest building a project management app like this for an accounting firm. I always follow the balance sheet, right? Because as I said earlier, the balance sheet is my checklist for how to make sure I put the books together properly. Everything on the balance sheet will tie back to something somewhere on the P&L eventually. With very few exceptions. So if you're wondering, well, how should I structure this? I like structuring it based on the balance sheet. So I start off with banking, then I might create the next list would be accounts receivable, right? Then accounts payable. So if you're doing bill pay for a client or anything like that, you have a list for that. And so on and so forth. So this is the basic structure, is if you're going to choose the ClickUp sort of method, you have one space, which in this case would be the Nerds Unite space. You create a project for each client, and then you create your lists within each project to describe the stuff you're going to do for each typical client, right? And so that's why I find because the balance sheet, again, if I get to payroll liabilities, then I know I need a list for for payroll. Right? I hate when I do that. Got to fix the A. If I come across sales tax liabilities on the balance sheet, that means I've got sales tax as a topic that I need to be able to address here.
I actually do work it the other way around, where I kind of have my general 8 or 10 sections, and then I make a template out of it, and then I pair off.
Well, what I'm suggesting is you build this out with the lists and then save it as a template before you actually use it on a client.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but you got to build this first before you can just create the template.
Sure.
And then or am I missing something? So when you say you work it the other way around, what do you mean?
Well, I see where you're going. I was just thinking you were saying do this for every client.
No, I'm saying build this out based on a typical balance sheet, right? And keep it pretty generic. Then over here, you save this as a template, and anytime you get a new client that you're doing monthly accounting and bookkeeping for, then you'll use the template to save yourself the time of having to set all this up.
One thing that especially as I'm setting this up, that I'm finding will be important to do is kind of have a hollow project or a hollow space in your case that I create the templates off of. Because if I need to tweak something on the template, if you've done any customization for the one particular client, and when you update the template, you will then duplicate all of the special customization.
By the way, I just learned something. Notice what I'm doing here is I'm color coding each of the lists, right? It just helps make it more visual. So, for example, when I'm looking at the whole project up here, banking is green, accounts receivable I've made yellow. But what I just realized is if I go to accounts payable now and I want to assign a color, you click, and you can put a description on the list itself, by the way, and notice it has the same WYSIWYG editor, so you can make sure it's clear what the purpose of this list is. You can assign the colors, but if you go to add or edit colors, you can also assign labels to the colors. So red might be a high priority thing, right? Right, although that label doesn't show up if you move your mouse over it, it does. It shows you the label when you hover your mouse over that color. We probably want a list for equity, right? We might want something for loans, right? And of course you can reorder these. So if you've realized that you put things out of order, very easy to drag and drop and reorder things. It's also, by the way, very easy if for some reason, let's say I realize get statement should be in another one of these lists, I can easily click and drag a task over to a different list. And I could do it from either place. So I can do it directly in here, just up and down, or I can drag it to the left right over the list where I want it to go. So a lot of flexibility here in terms of how you can organize this. Now, I want to cover the notes question. Hopefully Stuart's still with us. So it has a notepad. This notepad is really cool, but I wouldn't count on this replacing something like Evernote or OneNote, right? I've recently switched all my note stuff back to OneNote. So I would definitely, but it's great as the way we kind of summed it up in 97 and Up yesterday was this is a great sketchpad. So if I'm working on a project for a client and I just want to sketch some quick notes out, right, on client X, I can just quickly bang out a note and just kind of, so I don't have to worry about going out to another app to make the notes. Excuse me, I can sketch them out here and make sure you call the client, whatever the note might be. And the cool thing is, from here, I can actually hit this plus sign and convert it to a task, right? And if later I decide, okay, this is, this is going to go into my bigger picture, my OneNote notebook for the client, then I could certainly copy and paste it, right? And the little sketchpad also, nice little WYSIWYG, including a code editor where I can drop HTML code in here.
It'll send you like a daily email for what you have on your agenda, or no?
You'll set up your notifications in the settings. So let me minimize the
Sorry,
notepad.
I meant to.
Yeah, you got to go into here under settings, go to notifications, and there's actually a lot to go through here.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay, because that was about it on the sketchpad. If Stuart, if you're still with us and you want to unmute and kind of ask any questions or give your feedback on that, but that's what we kind of discussed yesterday in 97 and Up. That it's just a sketchpad, it's a quick, convenient way, and it's slick in the mobile app too. And then so here's your whole settings, and notice I can be very specific. So when I'm assigned comments, do I want to get a notification? In this case, I'm getting notifications everywhere, right? Email, mobile, web in the app, and then the browser. Right when a comment is resolved. Right now, I'm just being notified for pretty much everything. Right?
Yeah, sorry.
What do you mean?
I assigned some stuff to you. You got notification.
Yeah, no, I don't care because I'm playing with this, so I want to see how that all works. But so there's again, as with any app, there's let's put it this way: it's your responsibility if you're going to use this app to take the time, slow down, take a breath, and go through all this stuff and figure out how it works. Because I can't tell you how many times I'll see people asking questions about how or whether or not an app works on something, and it's like the answer's right there. You just have to take the time to learn it. Or worse, they'll complain and say, "Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't do this." And it's like, no, you haven't taken the time to learn it. How to do it. So, really, really important, especially with an app like this. It's very robust in terms of what it can do. To go through your settings here, go through your preferences, notifications. I like that it has dark mode. I think that's really cool. It's easier on the eyes at times. And this is a new thing with apps. A lot of apps are coming out with this dark mode concept. Also, there's a time view, which we didn't even look at. But when something's due at a particular date on the time view, I can click and drag this in order to change the due date. And I believe I can, and you can click right into it, of course, to focus on the task. And if you have a time assigned, so in a due date, you can also assign a time.
I believe I also saw you can sync it with your Google Calendar.
Yeah, it will integrate with your Google Calendar, but be careful. I would not recommend doing that. You'll clutter the crap out of your Google Calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to set the time at 9 a.m., done. And then when I go back to the calendar view, I thought you could actually, from within here, kind of drag it to expand the time.
You got to change to a week or day view.
What?
You have to change to a week or day view.
Oh, okay.
Or 4 day.
That's worse.
No, you were a few weeks before that.
Huh?
Go back to your month. That was on the 1st or the 8th or something.
I was a few weeks prior. Okay, so let's drag that to today. You would think that when you changed it, well, I guess it would take you to today. That makes sense. All right, so let's go to the week view. Okay, now you can click and drag to change and say, well, it's going to go on for 2 hours or whatever. But it doesn't actually show the duration here, does it? It just has a starting time. Oh no, you start at 9 a.m. and it's due at 10:30. Got it. That's how that works. All right.
Which I haven't totally played with yet, but I think could be really nice when you are getting these alerts, because I want to know when something starts.
Well, yeah, remember there was when we were playing with it, I had set a notification for 7:30 in the morning because I wanted to get an email reminder at 7:30 so that I'd remember I had to actually make an important call at that hour that day. And so it worked. I missed it because it was buried in my emails. But at first I said, oh, I didn't get the email, but it was there. It came at exactly 7:31 a.m. So what I might do is, set something up where those things get a label in Gmail, or set up a Zap based on my Gmail that shows me this. Real quick,
there's also a Slack integration too, so you can.
Yeah, you can have things go to Slack for sure, but
there's a way to use that estimate. There's also a place where you can estimate the amount of time.
I clicked on that earlier in the task. Yep.
And then it will add all those up. So when you're looking at that list, it will tell you the total amount of estimated time that you're going to spend on that list, which I find amazing.
Yeah, that is really cool. All right, last thing, and then we have to go because we're already over time here. I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second because I want to show the email thing, but I want to make sure I'm not going to show anything confidential when I do that.
And it's important to remember that it's not just email, this add-on. You can do it from any web page, and you can choose to link it right in with your email. That's the preferred use case for me. But let's say you're browsing a web page, you can take a screenshot of that web page and throw it right into a task right from that extension.
All right, so I just want to find an email I can use as kind of an example because this is really cool how this works. So let me go to, I just want to find an email that's sort of safe to open here without revealing anything sort of confidential. Okay, here we go. So share my screen again. So here's an email based on a voicemail that I just got. Somebody called me, I guess, an hour ago. So I've installed the Clickup extension in Chrome, which you can see at the top right of my browser here. And what that does is now anytime I get an email and I open it, it sticks this little add to Clickup icon right in the email. So I can click on that. And it takes a second, but it pops up this dialog. So I can attach this email to an existing task or create a new task. And from here, I can browse to any space. So I'll just go to the Nerd Enterprises headquarters space, and I'll go into the Nerd HQ, and I'll just stick it in my main high-level tasks here, and then create new task. Okay, now
you can also do your whole timing assignment at that level too. You don't have to just throw it there and then
timing assignment. Oh, you mean the actual
due date
time? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now let me browse over to that. and see where that went, because it went in here somewhere, and I don't see it.
There it is.
Oh, here, message from Pat Live. That's right. It goes, I didn't change the status. The status in this particular view is going to matter. So here's your message from Pat Live. It's pretty slick how this works. So it creates a task, and the email is just kind of an attachment. So in the past, I've had things like this work in apps where it actually created a link to the email in Gmail, and oftentimes those links would break, right? They would no longer work. But here it's just, and now I got, a full sort of version of the email, and I like that the formatting is retained nicely, right? So now from here, and the link is even live, so I can click here to email the person back. So forget about forwarding emails into ActiveClip. Into ClickUp now, I can just do it this way, and it's really nice. But there's going to be, there's going to be people who are going to say, well, it's a little clunky to sit there one email at a time clicking this. And I agree. It might even be faster to do, and I've done this process, I've done other versions of this process where you could even create like a label in Gmail and create a zap that says, when I label something such and such, send that, add that email to a task in ClickUp. Again, I haven't played with the Zapier side of this, Greg. It sounds like you were saying it's a bit limited, so you have to play around with your options there and see what works.
Well, again, that was on the other side that I was working with it. So maybe it's a bit more robust when you're changing something.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet to play with it, but I will, rest assured. And interesting, I go back to the email now, and it creates a little link in the email. Let me share my screen again real quick. I didn't notice this yesterday, but it creates this link here, which if I click on it, I'm guessing will take me right into the task that I created right in ClickUp.
And then you probably don't want to show this, but when you're back out at your inbox level, it also has a little flag on it that shows the exact task that it is linked to. It's a little codey because...
Yeah, it gives the task ID number, which is this weird like little code that it assigns every task. Yeah, it's like PG8FX. So anyway, that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. So Stuart, hopefully I answered your question about the notes. Like I said earlier, it's my main note-taking app has gone back to OneNote, which we're going to cover in a couple of weeks. So if you got the email about the upcoming Zooms that I'm doing, one of them is going to be on how I'm using OneNote now to manage everything for an accounting practice. Well, everything note-wise anyway. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm late for a call that was supposed to start at 9. I had to email him and told him that I'd be late. Anyway, so I'm going to go. Everybody join Gina's Hangout later today, right? 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Go to SBAA on Facebook in the group. She'll let you in. She'll invite you to the meeting. And
Thank you, Seth. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, this was a good one. Thank you, Seth.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
We
Have a nice
probably
weekend.
spent
Thank you, Seth.
we probably spent 5 hours, 6 hours on this in 97 and up over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful stuff. I'm excited.
It's like I said, I won't easily look to make a switch to something like this because it's a lot of work to switch over to something like this. So it has to be pretty damn compelling, and this has definitely, met that criteria for me.
And I like that you can play with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says when you first sign up. Play with this.
Yeah, go play with it. Well, it's, in all seriousness, I like the image that paints because that's what a lot of us, I think, forget to do. We get hung up, we're worried we're going to break it or something, right? And the whole thing is just if you go play with it and think of it that way, that's how you'll learn how to use the stuff.
Have you tried importing anything? Lists or tasks? Because you might be able to export from your Active Collab and import.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure I don't want to.
Yeah, the
I
problem...
always look at these kinds of things as an opportunity for a fresh start. So I can take what I did previously and improve upon it and build things better, stronger, faster. It's the $6 million productivity app now, right? Better.
So I vote for a part 2 later after you've played with this for a while.
This already is part 2.
It'll be part 3.
Part 3.
And it'll be on like how we've automated things with it. Like when I get into the Zapier options and see what you can do on that side of it. And other things.
Yay.
And other integrations. So it'll be automation and integrations will be part 3.
Awesome. Thank you.
You got it. And of course, if you want this kind of stuff all week long, just join me on 97 and up, right? You can try it for $1. $1 for a week. 97 and up. Just go to 97up.nerdenterprises.com. And you can join us here for $1 for a week. You'll get to see. There's a testimonial from Greg. There's one from Matthew. And I believe this page launched for all of you when you first signed in, or it's going to launch when you sign out. One or the other. I forget how that works.
Fine, man.
Okay, I will talk to you all soon. I got to go. I'm late for a call.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.